Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
This House and to speak, and especially on a bill as critical as C-35, which really plays a big role, I think, in determining the future of our nation. And before I go on, I just want to take a moment to recognize the member for Peterborough-Kawartha, who I think has done an incredible job of giving voice, thank you, to so many, not only mothers, but fathers, parents, and entrepreneurs, many of them women, and many of them new Canadians, who needed their voices to be heard here in the House of Commons. So congratulations to her and to her team, who are ensuring that we can get the best bill possible, not only for women, not only for families, but for all Canadians, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm going to go through three things within my speech here. I'm going to provide an overview of some of the points which many of my colleagues have laid out. After that, I'm going to give some testimony from many Canadians we have heard from across this country. And then I'm going to conclude with, I think, is probably the most perhaps challenging, disappointing aspect of this bill, at least for me, as a woman and as a parliamentarian, Madam Speaker. So to just review some of the points which my team has outlined, affordable quality childcare is critical, but if you can't access it, it doesn't exist. And we've said this time and time again, that frankly, the number of spaces that currently exist or that are forecasted to exist just don't meet the demand. So even though there are many Canadians, many families who want this service, this solution as provided currently by the government does not address it. Bill C-35 is not a child care strategy. It is a headline marketing plan. Again, we see the Liberals promising what they can't deliver. $10 a day daycare does not address the labor shortage and the lack of spaces. And I alluded to that in my last comment, Madam Speaker, but we have seen with this government time and time again, they promise the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they consistently fall short. And unfortunately, we're very concerned that this is happening with daycare spaces under C-35 and that this will continue to happen. Conservatives recognize that Canadian families should have access to affordable and quality childcare and should be able to choose childcare providers that best suit their families' needs. And we've heard from many Canadians that this one-size-fits-all does not necessarily suit many Canadians and the needs of many Canadian families. And I just want to reiterate that once again. Bill C-35 is good for families who already have a childcare space, but it doesn't help the thousands of families on childcare waitlists or the operators who do not have the staff or infrastructure to offer more spaces. I certainly recall, as a mother, I was very grateful when my husband had the foresight even to put our name on a list. I think it was probably 2 years ahead of our son requiring that space. So I think that this is a very tangible problem, and we will see it exacerbated as we see this program implemented throughout time. Bill C-35 increases demand for childcare but does not solve the problem of frontline burnout, staff shortage, or access to more spaces. And I think that this is a very critical consideration given the labor shortage that we have seen since the pandemic, and that we truly need to consider this as we implement Bill C-35, in the consideration of implementing Bill C-35. There aren't enough qualified staff to keep all existing childcare centres running at full capacity, let alone new spaces. And Bill C-35 discriminates against women. The majority of childcare operators are women. The language and intent of the bill prevents any growth and opportunities for private-run female operators. How does the Liberal government expect more women to be able to go to work when there are no childcare spots available? Waitlists, as I mentioned, are years long. Ontario's Financial Accountability Office projects that by 2026, there will be 602,000 children under 6 whose families will want $10 a day daycare, and the provinces will only be able to accommodate 375,000 of them, leaving 227,000, or 38%, without access, Madam Speaker. Government estimates also suggest that by 2026, there could be a shortage of 8,500 early childcare workers. That's an astounding number, Madam Speaker. In British Columbia, 27% of childcare centres turn away children due to lack of staff. I know my colleagues from BC have certainly been very adamant in expressing this shortage. One child care director who oversees 13 child care programs with 350 spaces says that in the past 2 years, we've had to close programs temporarily, whether it's for a day or two or shorten hours for the week, in order to meet the licensing regulations, Madam Speaker. We also talk about the child care deserts that exist, Madam Speaker, across this country, and that is very much a problem. So I have here, Madam Speaker, as I said I would, some commentary from Canadians who have written in expressing some of these problems, which I've outlined. Katie writes in, finding people who start at 6 a.m. or end at 11 p.m. is impossible. More flexible hours for people who work shift work. Adequate childcare is a huge barrier within healthcare. Cheryl writes in, something that many of my coworkers and I have talked about many times is how beneficial a daycare that had extended hours or near the hospital would be. So many healthcare workers struggle to find childcare that is available for the shifts we work. I've been raising my granddaughter for 14 months now and have spent so much time and energy finding childcare that will work for us. It has been incredibly stressful, and I'm so grateful for the care provider we have now who has worked in healthcare field and takes Ava at 6:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. for me. So both of these individuals writing in, Madam Speaker, to us indicating that this one-size-fits-all doesn't work for them, and that daycare solutions and solutions for families don't come in a box. They have to be flexible. So in bringing forward amendments for this bill, we are trying to improve the bill. Let's see who else. Shannon writes in, I'm going back to work full-time in July. I put my daughter on 6 daycare lists and have heard it takes years to get into a licensed daycare, Madam Speaker. I think start times are an issue as well. Most daycares, the earliest start time is 7:30 to 8 a.m. I remember this challenge, Madam Speaker, as a mother. And I start work at 6:30, so I need something earlier than that. Again, this government looking at a one-size-fits-all approach. Laura writes in, before, after school care, the reduced fees have been welcome for my 20-month-old, but the costs for my 6-year-olds before and after health care are now more expensive than full daycare, and this comes with a reduction of the CCB. So my family is now spending more on my care as my children get older and my children attend school. So there we see, Madam Speaker, some Canadians who have written in saying that this one-size-fits-all daycare does not work for them. So as you can see, I've outlined many challenges with this legislation. And with just under 2 minutes left, though, Madam Speaker, I'll get into what I think is actually the most problematic thing about this bill, which I don't even think is necessarily directly addressed through the policy within this House, and that is that I believe that this bill has been another tool that has been used as a divider, Madam Speaker. I believe that this bill has been used to divide rural versus urban. I believe that this bill has been used to divide those mothers who want to stay at home versus those mothers who want to go to work. I've seen on social media, very unfortunately, women judging other women. Why would you put forward a piece of legislation where women are put in a place to judge other women? But that is where Canada is at today, Madam Speaker. It's broken. Household debt is at a record level. Inflation is at a record level. Interest rates are at a record level. This country is in crisis, and this government really thought they had us with this bill in dividing us further. But the good news is, Madam Speaker, when the leader of the official opposition becomes the Prime Minister of Canada, this hateful division will end and Canadians will once again be united. And it starts with us supporting this bill and improving this bill, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I will thank my colleague for her speech, because in it she points out all the reasons why C-35 is important. As my colleague from the NDP had said in his last question, when we had a market-driven system, these issues existed before, and they are only going to be fixed with intention and with purpose. And so I'm glad to know that the Conservatives are supporting C-35, and it's funny to me that she's calling this a divisive bill when this has passed every stage so far unanimously. So there's actually seems to be much more agreement than my honourable colleague is letting on. There is, in fact, nothing in this bill that is looking to divide Canadians or divide women, for that matter. In fact, there's nothing that would limit choice in this legislation. So I'm glad to hear that she's supporting this bill. I'm glad to hear that Conservatives support childcare, and I hope that we can count on her support at third reading as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The Honourable Member for Barrie-Innisfil? Oh, excuse. Sorry. The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This government, this is all they have left now, is to divide, whether it's by putting region against region, whether it's pitting sector against sector, maybe it's gender, maybe it's religion. This is, if one need only look at the social media on this bill, Madam Speaker, and you will see that it has stoked division, unfortunately, and Conservatives are here to unify, Madam Speaker.
And comments, the Honourable Member for Cowichan-Mellowhett-Langford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, as a representative, a proud representative of a rural riding, I beg to differ. When I first ran in the 2015 election, childcare was a huge topic in that election. I can remember knocking on doors throughout communities in my riding of Cowichan-Mellowhett-Langford, and I've heard Conservatives talk about choice. There was no choice. I frequently met parents who were desperately wishing that they could afford to get a second job, but all of the money from that income would have just gone to the extremely high childcare space costs. So, I just like to ask my honourable colleague to reflect upon that. There was no choice in the beginning. This is an attempt to resolve that, to enshrine these funding agreements in place, and I'm just not sure where she's getting the division from. I see this bill as a positive step to addressing a problem that has been long-standing and which has been called for by childcare advocates for more than 50 years now.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Well, I actually think that the member and I agree in that we are looking to make this program here on this side of the House as inclusive as possible so that this program can fit families of all shapes and of all sizes, and that all providers will have the opportunity to participate in this program, Madam Speaker. And right now, that's not the case. We have said we will honor the provincial agreements, but we just want to improve upon them. We just want to allow as many families as possible to participate in this program, and as many female entrepreneurs as possible to participate in this program, Madam Speaker.
Time for a brief question. The Honourable Member for Spadina-Fort York.
The Association of Daycare Operators in Ontario has spoken about how female entrepreneurs are cut out of this program, and I'm curious for my colleagues' analysis on why that might be the case, and perhaps how changing that could actually make this program more accessible and readily available.
A brief, she's got 1 minute to respond. The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague across the way, and I'm very happy to serve on the executive of the IMF World Bank Parliamentary Network with him, so thank you very much for that. So, as you can imagine, the economy, not only, through you, Madam Chair, the economy both locally, domestically, and globally is always on our minds. So I'm glad he's thinking like that, and I think that the government and this minister should think like that as well, that we should be thinking about everyone prospering within Canada, not just a subset that works for the government in this program, Madam Speaker.